Your alternative talk radio contact. The Planet. KGRAradio.com.
With infinite complacency, people went to and fro over the earth about their little affairs, serene in the assurance of their dominion over this small, spinning fragment of solar driftwood, which by chance or design, man has inherited out of the dark mystery of time and space.
Welcome to another episode of Into the Fray, leering at you from the woodline. Visit the mothership at intothefrayradio.com. There you can find all the episodes, the blog posts, ITF gear, and sign up for the free guest newsletter. The weekly show is, of course, always free and available in all podcatchers, but if you'd like to support the show, and why wouldn't you, go to the website and click Become an Insider, which in turn gets you extra content each and every month. And by the way, if you would be so kind as to leave a rating and review in your listening platform of choice, Cosmic Karma shall be yours. Be part of the discussion by joining the interactive ITF Facebook group, follow on Twitter at ITF_radio, and Instagram. If you have an experience that you'd like to share, email Shannon at intothefrayradio.com. Thanks so much for listening. Now, if you would be so kind, buckle up your safety belts. Put that tray table in the upright position. Liftoff is upon us.
So, I was not exactly as up on the Owl Moon Prince as I thought I was. And I was looking into it today, of course, before we hopped on, and I'm going, this is some really incredible shit. It's amazing. I love it. But we're going to get into that a little later. Let's start with Strange Brau, Bull. It's so funny, the different pronunciations that I heard for that, because I was like, I don't want to sound like an idiot and say pronounce it wrong.
Damn those Germans.
The freaking Germans. We don't know how to speak it here.
Always causing trouble.
Oh, God, but they make amazing beer. Okay, how did you come up with this idea? And this is let me just do a preview for everybody. This is a paranormal, conspiratorial kind of a pub talk with different speakers and different subjects. It is at the Axe and Fiddle on 657 East Main Street in Cottage Grove, Oregon. And this happens every last Sunday of the month from 2 to 5 p.m. And you are the host of it. Are you the one that came up with the whole idea and organized it and producing it?
I did. It's been a while since I've done anything like this before, but we had a similar iteration dedicated only to Bigfoot up the McKinsey called Bigfoot and Beer, and that went really well. Unfortunately, the restaurant folded, and when it folded, I really couldn't find the ambiance that Ike's Pizza had, and that was the name of the little sleepy pizza restaurant up in the mountains. And so I put it to bed, and a different version of it took off in Portland with Guy Edwards. And then he stopped doing his, and I thought, well, I'm way out in left field now with the flute playing factor. So if I ever did this again, it would be a real Twilight Zone themed, something. And I never thought I'd find a really cool spot so close to my house, but I happened to find this awesome historic pub, and it's a beautiful 2-story building, kind of like it's just a brownstone historic pub, and it has a real co-op vibe to it, and awesome food, and they're really laid back, and they love what we're doing, And it's not always easy to get business in on a Sunday afternoon for most restaurants.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why I offered that, and it works out great for everybody.
Yeah, it does have a cool ambiance. I was looking at some of the pictures. Is that building old? Is there any, it's so cliche to ask this, but is there any, stories tied to that building?
Yeah, it's a cool historic town. A lot of ghost stuff. We just did a ghost, our second Strange Brau was on Ghost, and we had some locals show up that worked in haunted factories. The workers still show up to the factories and clock in as though they're not dead. And we had some speakers come in from, Paranormal Witness and some locals out of Washington. And then Chris Manier had some interesting ties in with the ghost phenomena as well. But that building itself, not so much that I know of with ghosts, but Buster Keaton, probably the most famous name that stayed in Cottage Grove and filmed his historic silent movie called The General. And so they love talking about, Buster Keaton. They have Buster Keaton days and whatnot. But maybe I could get an EVP of Buster Keaton someday, sitting down at the bar stool, having a glass of Budweiser. I don't know.
You never know. If you leave those recorders running, you never know what you might get. Yeah, so on this talk, we're going really heavy Sasquatch, of course, but I wanted to bring up a few of the names that you have coming up for your Strange Brau presentations. And the very next one is June 24th, and that is on Montauk. And you are, of course, having the best person on to speak about that is Christopher Garetano, the filmmaker behind Montauk Chronicles. July 29th, UFOs as the subject. August 26th, Little People. And then we're going to skip over this one because we're going to come back and talk more about this gentleman here. October 28th, Linda Godfrey on the Wolfman. And it looks like you're also doing a costume contest that night, huh?
Wolfman costume party. And Linda is going to be the judge, and she's going to do a Skype interview of a friend of mine that had a Wolfman or a Dogman encounter out of Silverton, Oregon. And so that'll be interesting to have her interview him live on stage.
Is he come out and talked about his story yet, or is this the first time he's going to be doing that? Wow.
Yeah, first time. You have to check with these people. Through the weeks beforehand, because at any moment it gets really nerve-wracking to talk about these things. So, if people back out because it's too much, I just completely get it. And if that ever happened to him, I wouldn't blame him. But it's happened before, so I'm always prepared for a secondary plan. But we'll have fun with a Wolfman costume party nonetheless.
Well, nobody better to interview him than Linda Godfrey.
No.
All right, Toby, let's take a quick break here. We'll be right back. Want to know an easy way to save some money? Lower the interest rate on your credit card debt with a credit card consolidation loan from Lightstream. Lightstream rewards consumers who have good credit with a great interest rate and no fees. You can get a credit card consolidation loan from 5.89% APR with AutoPay. Loans range from $5,000 to $100,000, and you choose your funding date as soon as today. My listeners get an additional interest rate discount on top of Lightstream's already low rates. The only way to get this discount is to go to lightstream.com/fray. lightstream.com/fray. Subject to credit approval, and rate includes 0.50% AutoPay discount. Terms and conditions apply, and offers are subject to change without notice. Visit lightstream.com for more information. All right, let's swing back now. September 30th is the subject of Sasquatch at Strange Brau at Axe and Fiddle. And the very... let me back up here just for a minute. So Ron Moorhead and the Sierra Sounds, and I'm going to plug a little thing in here for people that maybe somehow they haven't heard the Sierra Sounds before. So I'm going to play them right now for you guys so you can hear the Sierra Sounds, and we're going to talk about them a little after I play them.
We're in for a night, Bill. Somebody trying to talk to us. Some reaction to it. Like you're laughing now. That's our job. We know where we went for tracks and all that for sure. There's two of them across the creek at the big rocks. It's a hard act to follow. He sounds like he talks to us and they talk to each other. Yeah. Right there, I just seen movement right through there.
All right, so if we could just run over very quickly what folks just heard from Ron Moorhead and the Sierra Sounds.
Yeah, Ron has been out in the field with this for, since the early 70s, and he's funded himself doing it, not taking a lot in return. It's his life's passion. It's what he's doing as a senior citizen, which Ron is now, and he still wants to get back up to the Sierra camp and is making a life goal to keep getting back in there at least once a year. So, the sounds are they're validated, in my opinion, by Scott Nelson, who came in as a skeptic, never saw Sasquatch until he used Ron's sounds. Ron is an awesome imitator. With his cryptolinguistics background, he can imitate really well different languages, and he hears a language here. And a lot of people don't know, but Scott had his first sighting by using one of the phrases out loud and brought in a Sasquatch. And so those sounds are validated, in my opinion, by Scott using Sasquatch language to initiate contact.
Oh. Scott was on the list for Strange Brau, right? Has he already spoken, or?
No, so he'll be on with Ron.
Oh, okay.
Ron will give a dual speech with Scott in the background, and they'll kind of bounce off one another on the 30th when they give their lecture.
Is Scott's sighting public yet? Has he told that story?
He has told that story, but there's so much information coming in as far as the language concerned. There's so much that's happened to Scott hanging out with Ron just in the Sierras, and a lot of that stuff it just isn't talked about because it's so unbelievable, right? And this is why we did Strange Brau, and we did it in a pub, because there seems to be a little bit of liquid lubricant coming out with the truth after a couple of beers with a lot of these guys. And this is when you hear these stories. And so, Scott has talked a lot about his experiences with Ron. But as far as bringing one in, using the phrases, I don't know how public that is, but it's certainly not a secret.
Do you know what the phrase was, or are we allowed to talk about that? Or
Yeah, sure. No, there's a really specific phrase that uses what sounds like English, which is the word food, and then I believe I'm pronouncing Sasquatchanese correctly here, but it's the phrase Hayafwaya. So it's the double iteration of food Hayafwaya, and I believe it was that phrase that initiated contact. And Scott, correct me if I'm wrong if you hear this, or Ron. But yeah, that's the money shot. That's the phrase that brought it in.
Oh my gosh! And so he had, what the BFRO would call a Class A sighting, because of that.
Yeah, I think he was even with a gal that was totally new to the subject, and she had the sighting with him.
Oh
my
God!
So you can only imagine how that whole thing may have turned out, especially if the sun went down and the stars were out.
Yeah. Well, I have to track that one down. I want to hear what happened there. Very interesting. I didn't know about that. I knew he was the linguist behind everything, but I had no idea he had a sighting. Incredible.
Probably more sightings than we know since then, but that's the first one.
Yeah, hanging out with Ron, right? That's the ultimate. I would love to do that one of these days. He and his wife go out all the time, don't they?
They do. They're asked to come to, constant adventures, and so they're on the move quite a bit, and so to get him to come down here is no small affair for me, and so we're looking forward to having him here for, I think it's 3 days total, but he'll be visiting with people from Strange Brau for a couple days.
Yeah, because he's not just doing the one talk for the 3 hours at the Axe and Fiddle, unless the barbecue is also happening there. But we wanted to talk also about the Sasquatch experience and the barbecue with Ron Moorhead.
Right. So, since Ron is not up at the Sierra camp like he wants to be right now, I thought, well, let's bring the Sierras as close as we can and recreate it here in the national forest and some private property. And so we're in the process of making that happen for Ron. So the idea is that the 1970s and the High Sierras will come alive in Oregon, and Ron will appear in his 1970s plaid. And he will be in the company of 15. That's how many tickets we have for this. Only 15 tickets. And right now we're down to 10 tickets left. So we actually have 10 tickets left, and people have a chance to be in the arms of Biggie, which is the moniker that Ron gave to the larger one. And so I'm recreating Biggie. I've made one Sasquatch before and sold him to a baseball team here in town, and so we're in the process of making Biggie for Ron, and people have a chance to go out into the woods with Ron, pose with what I would hope would be a replica or a taxidermy close piece to what Biggie may have looked like. It's going to be 7.5 feet tall, beautiful long rolling hair in the wind in the forest, and people have a chance to stand at the camp that's recreated according to Ron's specs and get professional photographers to take their picture. And news break here, there's going to be some video as well, so they'll have video proof of their whole event. We're having 2 professional videographers show up from Seattle and one from Eugene, and then we'll rush off back to town out of the woods and develop the film and give Ron 4 or 5 hours to take a break, and then in the evening we're going back up to some private property to have a private fireside barbecue in the evening. And if we can coax them into it, I know I will be going out into the woods close to where the owl moon knee prints were found.
Wow.
And then in the morning, we'll meet Ron for a private debrief, the 15 of us, before he gives his talk, and have some brunch. And then Ron and Scott will wow us for the rest of the afternoon.
So has Ron seen the Biggie recreation, or are you going to surprise him with it and see how he reacts?
Well, Ron's such a super guy that he trusts me. And, I follow through with my artistic projects. Maybe not so much with, all of my professional ones as far as work's concerned. But when it comes to things I love, like Strange Brau and anything artistic, I really pour myself into. In fact, I just left my workshop, which is down from the Owl Moon Prince area, and we are working on the height measurements for where the knees should be placed and the thighs. So it's under construction. It should be, at the end of it, a very, very unique Sasquatch. I don't think there will be another one out there like this.
What if he wants to take it home with him, right? If he loves it so much, it's over 7 feet tall. Gotta shove that in the carry-on, right? Get another ticket for him.
Yeah, no, it'll be on display at the Axe and Fiddle. So if people don't, they can't afford a ticket, they don't get there in time, I'll have it there at the Axe and Fiddle all day Sunday while he's giving his speech. So there's a second opportunity.
Oh, I'd love to get out to one of these talks. What a cool idea, Toby. Huge high five. I started to look through all the people that you had there speaking, and I'm like, this is, I mean, they're in person. Obviously, it's over Skype, but it doesn't really matter. It's close enough, and I just think it's a wonderful idea. So, huge high five.
Well, thanks. And, with the advent of things like Zoom, which I mentioned earlier, which is just killing Skype as far as its capability, it's just a monster beast, and it's a very inexpensive app to have. I have the capability now to invite anybody from around the world lifetime. I think we can have up to like 10 or 12 people communicate with these live speakers. So there's an opportunity down the road for these people to actually interact lifetime with the speakers from the Axe and Fiddle. So that's in the works.
Well, I will definitely be checking Zoom out. Thank you very much. So that's what you've surpassed Skype then. You're not using Zoom like in those pictures and clips for Strange Brau. That's all Zoom?
No, we just found out about it about 3 weeks ago, and we kicked ourselves for using Skype because it's so limited. And so this technology allows you to do much more than I'm able to have time to tell you about. Wow. But it's a real beast. It's worth checking out for anybody that wants to do a podcast or interact with a live stream group. And it's just a very inexpensive way to go. And for what we're trying to do, it really, I mean, like I was saying the other day, imagine a mass sighting like the Zimbabwe sighting, about the Zimbabwe. And imagine a mass sighting like the Phoenix lights, and you're able to contact 4 or 5 people. They're able to Skype in, live time with someone like, like Davenport or like Travis Walton, and give their report to them as a guest. So it's an amazing way to go.
Great plug for them. I would love anything to kick Skype's ass because Skype has just been really dropping the ball. I think ever since Microsoft took over, it really just took a dump. So I'm going to check that out. So now that we've talked about Strange Brau, before we get to the Owl Moon Prince, can you just give everybody a quick bio and why you do this and, why Sasquatch? And I know you go out a lot and your heart's 100% in it. You take your son Jude out all the time too. Just let people know who you are and why you do this work.
It's a matter of believing that there's actual, there's magic afoot, much more than what I used to think, which was just a mystery. But I think there's some sort of magic afoot here when you're involved in something like this. So that's an added bonus, a total added discovery, and that hooks you even deeper. But, I found out early on, about 2009, that the subject matter was taken very seriously, and that I didn't just have to have a childhood dream that this creature existed, that there are witnesses and places to go and people to meet that actually were having interaction. And I just so deeply wanted to ingratiate myself with all of these people in order to have my own experience. And so it was seeking those people out that just kind of, tossed me down the rabbit hole. And I've seen a lot of rabbits, but there's a whole lot more to see. And it's just been a real blessing. And I never think of it as hard work. I never think of it as a pain in the you-know-what. And so for me, it's just been it's just deepened my life greatly. And I think it's made me a better person, to be honest, because it showed me that there's, real miracles out there, and this is one of them. And, don't give up hope. There's really cool stuff to discover. And so that's where I put Sasquatch. That's why I do it.
And how old is Jude now? I know he's still going strong with this stuff, right?
Well, he's a 15, and actually he'd be 16 this year. He's a teenager, so it's a little harder for teenage boys to leave the comfort of their social life. So we haven't been going out as much in the last couple of years, but we're looking forward to going out actually this Saturday a little bit, and then he'll be a part of Ron's adventure again in September because he knows Ron and Ron loves him. And so, yeah, he had an encounter and I haven't. So this puts Jude in a different category as far as a witness because he had a visual. And I wasn't prone to see it like he was, but it was a very stunning encounter that was corroborated by one other person with him. And he was very young when it happened, and I think it shaped a lot of what he thinks about the woods. It can be very scary to see something like that so young. And, when a monster is real, because that's really what it turns out to be to a child's mind, is some kind of giant monster. And so he's a little bit hesitant to go out at night because of that. But, it's been almost 11 years for me, and I haven't seen one yet, and it's kind of humorous with all the the hours and gas miles that I haven't, but it's all this other connective tissue that's happened while I'm out there, and that's what keeps me going back.
Yeah, things like the incredible owl moon prints. With Jude's encounter, has he written it out, or has he spoken about it anywhere that people can listen?
No, in fact, the other guy that was with him, they're both 16 or 17 now, and the last thing they want to do is dig up that whole memory. Wow. But it was just imagine two fathers with two of their boys, and the looks on their face, they just rang true when they saw this Sasquatch. And we both interviewed them separately, just as nervous fathers, and it was just such an honest depiction of an actual Sasquatch. It was, looking in an area where we were looking for Sasquatch, right? This is where some incredible sightings have happened over the last 10 or 15 years. So they were in the perfect spot to see one. I believe they did. And, when they started describing the anatomy of the hand that was wrapped around the Doug fir tree, they knew nothing about the anatomy of where the suspected thumb on a Sasquatch would be, but that was the first thing they both mentioned separately, is how oddly placed the thumb was. And that's when we were kind of like looking at each other as fathers, like, okay. In fact, I just got goosebumps thinking about that memory of when they were talking about the hand wrapped around the tree. And what was weird about that is it wasn't dark yet, and it was less than 45 feet away watching them, and they were less than 5 feet from us. And so we ran over there immediately, and obviously there was nothing, but it just goes to show that this silent, onlooker, this silent watcher, it calls the shots, and it called the shots that day.
Wow. But besides the hand, what did they see?
Yeah, so their description was that they were actually shooting a bow and arrow at a styrofoam head that I had brought up into the woods, always making monsters. And oddly enough, it was a throwaway bust of a previous Sasquatch iteration I was making.
Oh God!
in my toy shop. Yeah, I know. Isn't that funny? So they were
God.
bow and arrow at the Sasquatch face off a stone. And they were just being boys. And so we were happy to let them. There was no meanness to it. It was just a target, and they didn't do anything by it. And this Jude turned over to his friend, who I'll just say his name starts with a G. And he said, "Look, oh my gosh, over there." And they both looked, and there was a fairly large one, according to them, where they saw the branch just doing the typical tree peeking thing. And they both were white as sheets when they came over, and they hid. They were damn near tears, and they hid behind our lawn chair. And so that's what caused us to go over there and look, and voila, nothing. David Copperfield once again.
They really are the Liam Neesons of the woods. They're incredible. I mean, how long had it been there, right? How long had you guys been there doing whatever? I don't know if you were setting up camp or just out there hanging out or whatever.
Yeah, we were just following up on a married couple that were having like a feast in the woods, and they went to bed that night in this camp spot, and they had something spider crawl up behind a tree and start beating the ground to the point where it woke them up through the vibrations. And so they peeked out of their mosquito netting of the tent and saw this hairy man behind the tree beating the ground. And I think they're both Jewish. I know they were both Jewish because they were both screaming some Lord's Prayer.
Yeah.
And they got a hold of me. I went up there, and that's how we found the spot. And then it kind of snowballed into all these other crazy stories.
So how do you feel about that? I mean, and considering how Jude and his friend feel about it, that they don't even want to talk about it, how does it make you feel as a dad and an investigator where you're still going, well, I would like to see one?
I know. Just the other day I was out squatching up in the Mount Hood area, and I was with a witness, and we had sign coming up on us, and I was hanging up my hammock as the sign was coming in. He's just so mad at me that I'm willing to sleep out in a hammock while he's going to huddle in the car. And I'm like, listen, I just ignorance, man. It's all ignorance. It's my bliss right now. I haven't seen one. Right. And I'm waiting for that story, that oh crap moment. And if I have to be a pea pod in a hammock to get one,
yeah,
I'll be a little pea pod. And so nothing happened, of course. And but it has before in a hammock. Hammocks are the way to go because you're an open target, and if you snore a lot, they will come in if you're a big snorer.
Are you a snorer then?
No, I'm not a snorer, but the guy laying next to me was.
Perfect. Always bring the snorer with you.
Bring the snorer with you. Yeah.
Or just play one on your phone or on some kind of a portable speaker, right?
Right. Yeah, a little Bluetooth snoring action.
Yeah. The old YouTube playing. Yeah, I've interviewed a lot of people that have seen Sasquatch, and I'm right there standing next to you, Toby. I'm just going, you know what? I get it that, it terrified you, and maybe you don't even want to go in the woods again. I mean, heaven forbid. I feel horrible that you don't want to go in the woods again. It changed your life, and I'm still like hands raised, like Shannon's ready to go. I need that. I want that. And you said ignorance is bliss. Well, hands are still up. We still want it. So right there with you.
Yeah, no, I mean, give me a Travis Walton moment. Give me give me a full-on poltergeist moment. I cherish those little adventures, and for some reason, I just feel sheltered from the danger of it, and I think that's where the ignorance is totally overflowing my logic. But it's still where I am.
And Toby, I'll link this video, the interview that you did with me with the lights and the forest while you're out Sasquatching, and all this time we haven't spoken. I mean, did you start on that journey because you had the same experience? You were out for Sasquatch, and damn it, there's a light in the forest, and the FLIR isn't picking a person up with a headlamp or whatever. I mean, that's exactly my experience. So I just wanted to get off track for a second and ask you that same question.
Sure. Yeah. once I found an area where the paranormal met Sasquatch, I started a YouTube channel called Off Track, and it was my attempt at documenting Jude and my ventures, little 15-minute segments on different subjects, and lights were one of them, because they're just so popular in Bigfoot areas. And they're, if anybody doesn't know what they are, we're talking about an organic light source that is intelligently controlled, and it looks organic in nature, but it has a very bright, almost mechanical, it's so bright that it's nothing that that's living. And they interact with you. And we've had a chance on, let's see here, 1, 2, 3, 4, I'd say 4 different occasions. And the last occasion was last Saturday up in Mount Hood, where we had, there's a reason why the Indians played certain instruments, drums being one of them. And so you bring your leather drum with you like you're a native and beat your drum. And then I broke out the flute because I'm a full-on flute player. So I'm playing the flute.
You're a literal flute player. See, everybody? It's awesome.
Yeah. So we're standing there with a FLIR and walking through the woods, and I grabbed the flute, and I'll be damned if we both didn't see one of these little red sparks ignite deep in the woods. Then right after the sparks, just like, for me, this is a sign that there's Sasquatch near. This is the calling card. Before the smell, before the rock throwing, come the lights. The lights are basically calling cards like, oh, we're going to come check you in either via owls or via the deer or via, some kind of natural animal by remote viewing them. Well, I think they use the lights. And if the lights are connected to them, then it's absolutely, a Sasquatch issue. But after we saw these little red sparks, one in particular, the smell of musk filled the air. And then we saw another light, and then we heard 2 feet just go tromping through the swamp. And that's when I hung up my hammock and I was declared a crazy man.
Well, I've mentioned it before, and it was the same when you interviewed me. It's kind of one of those things, you're out there for one thing and something else happens and you're going, hang on a second. Like, Kirk's out here with a $8,000 FLIR going, who's the jackass, pardon my language, but who's the jackass out at 3 a.m. in the freezing cold rain? We were huddled in a barn, tromping through across the ravine in the woods with the headlamp on, And I'll be damned. We all go to the front of the barn. It's like, it goes, the light goes, oh my gosh, people can see me. So it kind of dove down to the ground. And I'll be damned. The $8,000 FLIR, whatever much it was, 6,000, it was a lot. Couldn't pick up any body heat because there wasn't. It was not a person. It was just the strangest thing. And you're talking about 6 people that saw the same thing. So I don't know. Yeah. What is that?
Right. Wes Germer was there, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah. He talked abundantly about the lights.
Absolutely.
Now. I mean, it's almost half the show.
Really? I'm glad that he does, because it's just something that. And soon after that, though, it was quite the event, Then we had something hitting the side of a metal, like a small shed, and a couple of different times. So it's just this whole thing, and you're kind of going, I want to separate the two, but sometimes it's really, really hard to do so.
Well, and Sarah doesn't do this anymore. I don't know what they do privately, but there's a reason that a lot of these people that were immersed back out quickly. And when your spiritual beliefs collide with the paranormal, it can be a very spooky thing for them. And they're very honest about the fact that it got real spooky. And they haven't talked about all of the issues, but we're not talking about things just outside anymore. We're talking about things coming inside. Right. And so when you're working with long-term witnesses, things shouldn't be happening inside, especially if all the doors are locked. But things are happening just like a haunting inside. Very similar to a haunting, and it got very unnerving. In fact, I'll bring up something here, and you can tell me to back off, T-Dog, but she showed me a picture that you and her took with something standing behind you. And I remember seeing this, what looked like a canine or something very large. I mean, I don't know if that was a squatch or what.
Was it the cone head that was behind the bushes?
Yeah.
Yeah. I was over there while she was taking all these snaps, and then lo and behold, and I have to ask her because I don't think, and I was actually, it's funny that we bring her up because I just texted her the other day just to say, hi, Sarah, I miss you. You know, I'm thinking of you. They're good people. I love them.
Yeah.
Well, I don't think that photo has been released, and I'm going to catch a lot of shit for even just, this coming up, and everyone, because people, and I hate it too, when someone's like, well, you brought it up and you can't share it, but sometimes that's the case, guys. You know how that goes, right?
Yeah.
You get a lot of emails. They're like, screw you for even bringing that up, but... All right, guys, a little addendum here. I actually did get in touch with Sarah Brown, and she allowed me to release all of the photos, including some of the comparison shots, and one of the final ones that you will see in the show notes on intothefrayradio.com is Sarah in the exact same position. She's standing on a chair, and she has her hand up. And everybody on Facebook has been saying, well, that is ground level brush, so it's probably a groundhog standing on its hind legs. And I can assure you I was there in person. You guys know I would not bullshit about this. I can assure you that brush is not ground level. You cannot see over that brush. And in fact, I misspoke. I think in this interview, you cannot see over the brush even when you stand on a chair. And you can see that because Sarah's hand is sticking up over the brush. So you can't even see over the brush there as a person standing on a chair. So again, that is not a small mammal standing on its hind legs, and I would not be speaking about this or sharing the photos had I not been there in person to confirm this information. I'm not saying it's a Sasquatch or a dogman or anything. I'm just saying it is very interesting. So, of course, I welcome anybody to take those photos and do any manipulations you can or want to in Photoshop. I know there's a lot of people more adept at that than I am. Yeah, that is the big creeper, I think, is what Sarah coined that, whatever the hell it is. Something really so strange. It looked like, I don't know exactly what that was, but, I was right there.
And the point is, it was broad daylight. Yeah. You didn't see it. It was right behind you.
No clouds.
And, it's just one of those head scratchers where you go, okay, these are adding up to paranormal experiences now. This isn't just, flexibility at the mid-tarsal. This is something else.
It's so much more. It's just something interesting that happened. But with the Brown stepping away from this also, I don't want to always keep, it's okay to talk about it now, of course. We don't need to back off, but I didn't want to keep bringing that up because, there was some cool stuff that happened that I do talk about a lot, but that was one thing that it really took me aback, to be honest with you. Like, really.
Yeah, it's symptomatic of a bigger issue because I've seen it before. Tons of times, people that have spent years and thousands on this, and one day they're done. They're absolutely done. And you just have to wonder, well, what happened? How crazy was it that night or that day? Because you don't just suddenly drop. They're traumatized on some level. I've spoken to these people privately. They've had traumatic experiences. They have full-on PTSD, and they are not willing to go there anymore.
Well, you know what's crazy is that, this was when they were deep into Sasquatch. When Wes and I went out there, it was me and Wes and his girlfriend, and it was broad daylight, and she's got, Photoshop, and she's got all this stuff to just lighten things and bring things up, and we were sleeping there, and she wasn't in there editing anything, and she called me in, and she's like, so I just got this. You can see orbitals. You saw it, right? So you could see a brow ridge and orbitals for eyes and this massive cone head and hair.
Yeah.
I was right over there, and I sure as shit didn't see a 9-foot Sasquatch standing next to me. Nope. Didn't hear anything, didn't see anything, but it sure as hell came up in the photograph.
I just want to make sure that people know I'm not saying that there's any PTSD associated with Sarah John at all.
No.
I'm talking about the bow hunters that I meet that are scared and that won't go bow hunting anymore. I'm talking about the loggers that suddenly don't go, they quit their job. That's what I wanted to do with Strange Brau, is give these people a voice, give these long-term witnesses a place where they're comfortable to talk about the things that bother them, and cool their jets with a cold brew in their hand. And you see, this combination just works because this is where these people meet. This is what they talk about, in the little nooks at the bar are these real issues, because you can't talk about a lot of this stuff with your family. You got to meet somebody in a shady corner, and just trying to normalize the conversation like Luis Elizondo is doing with the UFO phenomenon. I mean, we're at disclosure period right now on some level. Let's just talk about it all. Let's bring it out.
How about the bow hunters that are in the tree? What's the UFO researcher's wife that was in the tree with the bow, and then she sees the predator type? It was in the David Paulides book, in the Hunter's book.
Okay.
It was quote unquote the predator, and she saw one in a tree across from her, about the same height. I mean, that's already pretty terrifying. And it was exactly shimmering like the predator. You're just kind of going, that's just not normal. And I'm out here by myself, and it's probably like 4 a.m, and sun's just coming up, and you're probably thinking you're in a lot of trouble. I mean, how do you equate that to something normal, right?
Oh, you can't. I mean, unless that's the new normal. Yeah. And to the credit, Barb Shoup caught an amazing image while she was Sasquatching up near Greenwater, Washington, and she has one of the best pieces of footage of something cloaking. It's undeniable what she filmed. I mean, everybody's on camera with her as she's filming this cloaking image darting in and out of view, and then it takes off in an instant. It's very tiny. It's a smaller looking, elf-like looking thing, but it's just like Arnold Schwarzenegger's Predator. And you have to wonder, okay, where did they get this idea where light is bending around a figure? This was pre us even understanding this was something you could do with technology. I mean, this was, I granted that Predator had a piece of technology that allowed it to do that, but wouldn't that be a bizarre thing if these things have technology that is granting them this access to cloak?
Just some extra little gene or whatever it might be. I don't know. I don't think anything's too crazy to spin a little bit of conjecture on. I just don't. Not with the kind of story here.
Cuttlefish cloak, chameleon's cloak,
yes.
Octopus's cloak. They camouflage, of course, but is a form of cloaking. I mean, they're avoiding something. So there is a natural way to do this with your pigmentation. How they do it, I don't know. But, it seems to be too wild for some people to swallow. But, at a place
all
like
you have to do is YouTube it.
YouTube it. Yeah, there you go.
I bring up cuttlefish all the time. I've brought it up a number of times. And it's not cuddle like C-U-D. It's C-U-T-T-L-E fish. Cuttlefish. Right. Look it up. They're incredible.
Yeah.
You never know. Why couldn't a large mammal do that? Possibly. Maybe. Just maybe.
Yeah, it's fun to speculate. But it'd be terrifying to see. It's fun to speculate, but it would be terrifying to see that.
Like, you know what? You guys are already so big, and now you can be damn near invisible. So wrong. So messed up.
Yeah. Well, I've had something run up behind me in broad daylight on 2 legs. And it was an unnerving experience that put me in my place. Yeah. And it was the only thing better than that was what happened next, because I was on a trajectory back to my Jeep. And, when you have something running at you from behind in broad daylight, what do? You turn around to see who the hell it is. Mm-hmm. And it stopped about 12 inches from my back. Nothing there. And I turned back down to walk briskly back to my Jeep. And below my feet was a bisected mole. It was pinched in half, and it was oozing blood at my feet. And it had just happened. I mean, because the blood was literally oozing out of this poor little animal, and there was no insects on it. I would have most likely noticed, an 8-inch long mole squirting blood at my feet in broad daylight. But those are the kind of crazy things that happen when you're out Bigfooting.
Yeah. I know that people love to make fun, and, you know, the term flute player is like a 4-letter word to some people, and they get super angry. But you know what? Sometimes I go, do you guys actually ever go out, or have you, once you have something happen that you go, hang on a second, I was out here for this, and now this is happening, blah, blah, blah. You just, you can't explain that. You can't just, you know, shove that out of your mind completely when you're talking about these things. I know that we want them to be flesh and blood, because I say it all the time. I'm like, if they're not, we're never going to find out what they are.
There's people in the BFRO, people in the Olympic Project, people in all these organizations. You know, Kirk Sigerson coined the term aper. So these apers are having these paranormal experiences, and it's okay to talk about them. You know, you don't have to tell me. But it's okay now to talk about this stuff, because the conversation is being had without you, and you're being left behind. I mean, when you go to a UFO conference, they're so much more advanced than the Bigfoot people. They're just dealing with the things that Ron is dealing with as far as quantum physics, and having these amazing conversations like Jeremy Corbell and George Knapp, who I was lucky enough to meet a couple weeks ago.
I'm very jealous of that. You know that. Yeah. I love George Knapp.
Oh, gosh. Yeah, it was awesome. So I'm just saying that, you know, I don't have any hard feelings about the fact that they belittled flute players. I get it. This is just a different branch on the weird tree.
Right.
And, you know, eventually this conversation is going to be had.
All right, well, let's not put this off anymore. Let's talk about the owl moon prints, and if you could just set us up with, you know, what were you doing? How'd you see it? What day was it? What time of day? All that good stuff.
Okay. Well, a friend of mine, Daryl Adams, was lucky enough to draw an elk tag for March, which is really rare. But there was a plot of land not too far from where we all live, and he had a section of land where we could go rifle hunting. And I'm not a big hunter, but I'm down for learning. But Daryl's also a Bigfoot enthusiast, and the hunt didn't go so well for us. We were just driving around in the mountains, and he said, well, I think I saw some stick structures, so, you know, let's turn this full on before I have to go back and cook dinner to a Bigfoot game. And I said, okay, let's go see these stick structures, Daryl. And so we're coming up around the bend, and I'm sitting in the passenger seat and just looking for sign. And we come into a corner where there's some red clay at a 30-degree angle shooting upwards from the skid road. And there's some scatter of what looked like elk sign or buck sign. And it was coming along near this section where these giant divots were placed about 22 inches above the gravel road. And I said, Daryl, stop. And so we stopped and we got out. And I just said, you know what? Let's roll camera. That's strange enough. Back up, get the camera out. And so what we recorded and what's on the Facebook page of Owl Moon Prints, if you go on Facebook, you can see this whole thing unfold. If you go back to the first post, is us looking at what looks like these giant knee prints placed deep in the ground. And granted, at first it looked like it could have been something other than knee prints. You know, I just thought maybe it was, you know, I've been burned before with this stuff, and I thought, well, let's just go through all the different animals this baby could be, mainly elk, bear, or known animals here. But then we got in deeper, and we started seeing how clean the right knee was in particular, and it didn't have any tracings of pebble or debris washing down in it. It looked as though two knees were punched down and you could see anatomy. And as you got in closer, and I did with camera, you could see what looked like hair poking vertically up out of the clay, almost like you would have stabbed, you know, the bottom of the knee print with these little tiny, fine, human-like black hairs. So then we really started rolling camera, and we backed up, and we got a view of the whole area, and like, okay, you know, this is pareidolia, maybe to a degree. Let's really think. And then we said, you know, let's just do more than thinking. let's cast this whole thing. Let's treat this as though this is something similar to the Skookum cast, right? This is the only other cast that I know of that is a very large size body impression of a reported Sasquatch. So I called Chris Minier, who's a Bigfoot investigator for the BFRO, a friend of mine. And I said, this is what I think is happening up here. Do you have any advice? And he goes, well, cast the whole damn thing. And I said, okay, I'll cast the whole damn thing. That's like, 36 inches or so worth of plaster, and it's going to be deep, and it's at an angle, right? And it's going to be dark when we do it. So we went and secured all the proper supplies from the dollar store, except for the Hydrocal, or Fix-It-All in our case. And around 11 o'clock at night, underneath the owl moon, which was also called Good Friday or the blue moon, this really was a once in a blue moon thing.
Yeah.
We cast these impressions. And after we secured them, we got them all secured. Nothing broke except little tiny crumbs off the side. Shoved it in the back of the pickup truck, something the size of, I don't know. It's just a very large, deep impression, and we're afraid that it's going to break. And so we're doing everything we can to make sure it doesn't break. We leave it alone in a garage for 3 weeks, and then we start to uncover it. And of course, we had to leave it alone so the plaster would dry, and we could possibly see stuff. Well, we started to see stuff. And I should back up. Before we even cast it, we're filming ourselves, documenting through a very sterile procedure of collecting individual hairs. Yeah. Because we thought, well, if these hairs are anything important, there's going to be a lot of skepticism that we didn't collect them properly. So let's collect them properly. And so we did, and sealed them up and held on to the hairs. And as we're 3 weeks fast forward, we're uncovering the prints. And you can see hairs coming vertically out of the knees. And you can see the roots of these hairs coming out of the knees. And you start to see anatomy present itself that is so hard to say that it's not a knee at the end of the day. Things that look like the patella, the arches in between, the bone and muscle tissue, and then skin and hair flow. All these things are present in the owl moon prints, and shin. So I see these hairs off, and I sent them to Cindy Dosen because she's the one trusted voice, right, in Sasquatch research. She's a straight shooter, and she's on the side of science and connected to the Olympic Project. And I said, Cindy, you know what? I want to have my Geraldo Al Capone bank vault moment with you. Do you mind? And she goes, yeah, how do you want to do that? And I said, well, if these hairs aren't confiscated at the border and you can actually look at these 2.5 or 1.5 hairs I sent you, you can believe me. I didn't contaminate them because I'll send you the video of how we collected them. And she says, okay, that's fine. I said, you come on live on Skype or I think we use Facebook Messenger, and you present the evidence in front of strange Brau and tell people, that this was an elk or a bear or whatever. But it will be an exercise in our ability to show transparency in the process in this little 5-minute clip. So I preceded this little 5-minute clip before I brought Cindy Dosen on. And, I addressed the audience, all 40 of the people, and just like, hey, get ready for the empty bank vault. Well, the bank vault was full as far as Cindy was concerned. Yep. And she said, you have an unknown species hair type that matches. Well, let's read it here. I've got the.
Yes, please, because this is incredible.
First of all, she said the medulla, which is important, right? The medulla was not defined in the hair. It was amorphous. Trace ovoid bodies in the medulla area. So that she schooled me on, the fact that if there's an absent medulla, it's more human-like. And she says, without question, this is not an ungulate. She schooled me on, how many varieties of ungulate there were. So it didn't have any cloven hoof. So it was out of the elk realm. Then she says the hair is natural. It has a worn, tapered tip associated with what? And I said, what? And she goes, a limb. And I said, a lower limb? She goes, yes. And then she said, in her last note here before it gets to the main part is, the hair measures long. It is reddish brown. Likeness comparison to ocean shores baby Sasquatch hair from my database of Scott Taylor. The conclusion is that the following has been determined from a microscopic hair examination. The sample may have come from a loose hair in the last stages of resting growth. No post-mortem banding on hair to indicate death. This was from a living live animal. All other animal species have been ruled out. This, and in capital letters, this is an unknown hair.
Boom.
So I mean, it was so cool. They just erupted, and
What about you? You must just be speechless.
I was just laughing because I was looking at Daryl, and he had the biggest shit-eating grin. I was like,
yeah,
oh, no way. And so we laughed about it. And I said, we got to do better, Daryl. So immediately afterwards, I'm like, we got to do better. And he goes, what do you mean? I go, we have to figure out how big this thing was. So we called Scott Taylor, who's hair at match, right? Scott is a BFRO guy. He works at Bone. He's an engineer. He's a brainiac. He's a Bigfoot guy. He had the matching hair. And I said, Scott, we got to come up with a weight measurement. How do you do it? He goes, well, you got to get your knees on the same substrate right next to where you cast them, as close to the 30th of March as you can, which would be now, and cast your print just the way you did that Sasquatch print. And I want you to do it. And I want you to do it at, at a running speed and dive your knees into the mud. And then I want you to do a resting slam. And then we'll take the medium depth in the surface area, and then we'll know your weight compared to the depth. And then we come up with the depth of this based upon mass. And so we worked the numbers around a couple times, and we came up with an extraordinary number, like over 800 pounds. And then he reworked the numbers. And he sent me back this number, and I was just like, wow, I'm not an engineer, but did you say 1,400 pounds?
Yeah, you're like, excuse me?
Yeah. And he goes, yeah, that's the surface area match for the weight. I'm within a couple hundred pounds. And so we had a feral type human with an unknown hair type that left that impression.
Yeah, and here's a snapshot, and I got it off your Facebook page because you're so thorough with everything. You have all the numbers up there. You're 230 pounds. You left 2.5 inches of an impression in there, and the owl moon impressions are 5.5 inches deep, and that is where Scott came up with the estimation of 1,400 pounds.
Yeah, it's still hard to believe. Like I want to triple check, quadruple check everything. And, there has not been a lot of feedback in our corner checking these impressions out. Cindy Dosen has helped out, and Scott has been generous enough to help out. I mean, these are people that I can just call about it. But, what I really want, and part of the reason I'm on here, aside from promoting Ron's adventure up in the woods with us and Strange Brau, is that, this is a plea for people that are kind of semi-interested in the subject matter, but have an anatomy background, have a zoology background, have a mammal background, and, want to disprove this. I would love for a neutral voice to come in here and see for yourself what we have sitting in this garage right now. Because every time I walk by it, it's just like, I can't believe we're the only ones looking at this. I mean, it's right there on Facebook. I mean, I haven't had anybody email me back or reach out to me and say, oh, I see so much of this, I see so much of that. It's because of Cindy Dosen, right? It's because of the video. It's because we locked every door behind us as we documented this, and then we gave it to this respected voice.
Yeah, and no pun intended, but it left quite the impression on me in a very short amount of time. So I'll try to pull as many pictures as I can off of your Facebook page, and I will link the video where, you guys were, like you said, you locked every door behind you. You can see yourself with the gloves and the tweezers, and you're putting the hair in, and you're like, I didn't touch the sticky part on the envelope. Like, it's very clean. You guys did everything you could to secure the site. So, George Knapp, how is George Knapp tied to this?
Right. How is he tied to this? He was giving up on Skinwalker Ranch at the McMinnville UFO Festival for 2.5 hours. And I would have been a fool not to try to get there and meet him.
Amen, yes.
So Jeremy Corbell was there. The people from the Zimbabwe UFO sighting were there. It was just if anybody thinks that they've gone to UFO Festival and haven't been to McMinnville, you haven't been to a legitimate party. That's the place to do it. And so he gave this amazing presentation. And before he did, I had an Al Moon dossier with color pictures and a hair sample in it. And the hair sample was one that broke off a piece of plaster. And so it was embedded inside of it. And it was one of our special pieces. So I put it in an envelope, and I attached another envelope with some latex gloves in it. And he was coming out of the bathroom, and I grabbed him by the shoulder, and I was like, oh, George, you got to talk to me here for a second. You're the voice of reason. I'm going to hand custody over to anybody. I even signed the back that I passed the chain of custody on to George Knapp. And so I hand him this dossier and asked my name. And then I just wanted to make sure that this was all on record. So I asked them at the very end when they're doing the Q&A, I was like, George, I gave you that Sasquatch hair. You going to take this seriously? And I felt, really, it was totally cringeworthy moment for everybody that this guy was basically double checking George Knapp. But I just didn't want it to get lost in the shuffle work, because the Sasquatch hair is a really cool thing to have one of them, let alone, give one away. So anyway, that was a couple weeks ago, and I haven't heard anything since, but that was the last that I'd heard from George. And, maybe it'll be the last I ever hear, but I had an opportunity to meet him and give him something really cool that I don't think he ever got before.
I think he'll take it very seriously. And George is, he's beyond a good guy and a straight shooter. So this was just a couple weeks ago he got this.
Well, this was a couple weeks ago that I met him. The Al Moon Prince was on the 30th of March, I believe. Yeah. And so the festival was a couple weeks ago, and I dropped everything and went up there and slept in my car, and just made sure that I got as many promo flyers out for String Brau to an anxious crowd, and then said, well, I'll tie a little bit of the Al Moon Prince in here if I can. And by golly, I was able to do it. And we ran into some other interesting people up there that were interested in the Al Moon Prince, and I documented that. One of them was a gal named Sarah Lemos, who is a world-renowned psychic, who is a complete disbeliever in Sasquatch, and thought that it was just basically, a bunch of eager young boy men out there playing in the woods. And so I recorded a conversation with her about the envelope that I put in her hand. And as a psychic, you can do whatever you want with this, but she had a very profound experience on camera as she became a believer holding this envelope in her hand.
And that was the envelope with the hair before you gave it to George? Yeah,
absolutely. And she just had her hand actually wrapped around the envelope and was able to tell me very specific stuff about where this hair came from. And I actually had one little tiny clipping of hair that had already been contaminated in another envelope. And I said, Sarah, let's put a real hair in your little psychic hand and see what happens. So we put one in her hand, and she held it with her finger, and then that's when the fireworks started. And it was just a really cool friendship that developed after that. And, take of it what you want. She's been relied on by some very credible sources with her ability. And she said some stuff that I was really impressed with.
So when she's done doing her reading, holding this envelope, so you're saying it completely changed her view on Sasquatch. She now knows they are out there.
Yeah, she knows they're out there based upon holding that envelope, according to her ability. And she had a total oh crap moment.
Really?
And she didn't want to. She just turned to her friend who was out of chemotherapy and turned to her at the table in front of God and everybody and said, oh my effing Lord, they're real. And went on into this whole spiel. She's trying to unravel like what this is. How does this work? And it was a very cool, surprising moment that I put credibility behind, because I think psychics are legit. I think Sarah's legit. And I think that moment was legit. And I was just enough that she let me film it. And so...
Is that on your channel, Toby?
Yeah. It's either on the Strange Brau Facebook channel or the Al Moon one. Okay. Because it's so flute playery, I might have put it on the Strange Brau Facebook page, which is out there as well, because it's more paranormally, and not attach it directly to the Al Moon
I understand. You have to be choosy. I totally get it. I get it.
Yeah, well,
I get those emails too. So
yeah, you got to kind of weed out how you're going to do things, and that was one of the choices that I made. Like, well, I'll put that on the paranormal channel and see what people think. So eventually, she'll come down and talk at greater length about what she thinks is going on and do a lecture about it.
So, I mean, for your purposes, because of the reason that you went down to that UFO festival, I mean, you must be kind of watching her do her thing and going, okay, I made the right decision, and now I'm going to give this a George Knapp a score, right?
Oh, it was incredible. Yeah, no, I mean, I got a chance to meet, what's his name, Clyde Lewis, and do an interview with, and, just as he was closing up his radio gig at the McMinnville Hotel, and then to meet Remy Corbell, who I'm such a fanboy over his artistic eye, and George Knapp was just the frosting on the top.
Yeah. You know what's funny about Clyde is that I listen to a lot of Clyde Lewis. In fact, I've been more heavy Clyde than anything. It just, he's Clyde Lewis. Well, he's so funny because sometimes he'll just pepper in like major shit and you're just going, wait, back that train up. I haven't been listening. He's been on air for 20 plus years. Well, I only started listening maybe, 8 months ago. And, he does like 3 to 4 hour shows. So it's a lot to get through, which is great. But sometimes he just goes, oh yeah, I was at ECETI and I saw a Sasquatch. And then he like goes on and you're like, wait, hang on a second. You were at ECETI and you can't just tell the story, and you're like screaming at your phone. You're like, no way, don't go back. So Clyde is definitely, he's a no nonsense kind of guy. And I'm kind of going, if he saw a Sasquatch and he saw this and that, then he wouldn't just say that. So it's cool you got to meet him.
Have you been to ECETI Ranch yet, Sam?
I have not. I've spoken about it. I did an entire episode about it with the guys from Euphomet. And that's a show that's coming back, by the way, everybody. But it's on my list. It's on my list for sure, yeah. Good old Trout Lake, Washington.
It's worth the trip. I've gone 4 times now. And it is a crazy, crazy town, Trout Lake, Washington.
You've been there 4 times.
I'm not too far away. It's a 4-hour trip for me.
Wow.
So it's not a big deal, and it's $10 to camp there, by the way.
Oh my God.
And do a skywatch. It's definitely in anybody's budget. In fact,
right.
We're doing a trivia night on what day's trivia night? I think it's July 29th. So people can come to trivia night at the Axe and Fiddle and win a trip to ECETI for Labor Day, the weekend after Labor Day weekend, and come with me. So we're going to do an ECETI trip too.
Okay, so let's close with this, because I'm watching the video and I see the, it's incredible the way you guys did it. It was perfect because you're like, this just happened. Let's film this. It's perfect. We're on the side of the road and I'm looking at these massive knee prints, patella prints. Why do you think that creature was kneeling right there? What was he doing?
What was she doing? That was a surprise.
Oh.
We'll just go with what Sarah had to say.
Sarah says it's a she.
She said it was a frightened female fleeing to the north, and there's some credence to what she said, because she brought up something that Cindy Dosen had mentioned earlier, and I guess we'll close with this. Cindy Dosen, before I'd gone up to the McMinnville thing for certain, she asked me, she goes, Toby, was there a very large tree near these prints? And I said, well, I don't know. It was dark that night. We've been back since, but I don't know. Well, yeah, there's a huge Doug fir about, 4 to 5 feet above the prints. And she goes, look in that tree for evidence, because it most likely fled up to that tree. And I said, well, why do you think that? She goes, well, it matched a juvenile Sasquatch, first of all. But, the weight is way out of proportion for a juvenile. But maybe there's a juvenile involved. Maybe that's not an adult hare. I don't know. And I said, okay. So Daryl and I went up that way. And I said, Daryl, let's go look in the tree. And he found hair and mud about 7 feet up in this giant Doug fir tree. And he's holding the hair up in a pair of tweezers, so excited. And the hair flew away.
Oh, shit.
Out of his little tiny tweezered hands. And I just felt so bad for him, and I felt bad for everybody. But this gets back to Sarah. Sarah, she's having this crazy psychic moment at the McMinnville UFO Festival. Says, above these knee prints, you found something about 4 feet up, didn't you?
Oh my God.
And I said, what?
God.
She goes, yeah, the female that was fleeing. You found something, a treasure or something that escaped you.
Oh.
And I mean, I've got goosebumps hearing this right now. And so, I mean, she didn't know me. In fact, the way the whole thing was so weird, she basically picked me out of a crowd and said, you have a story to tell. Come here and talk to me. I didn't know this woman at all.
Oh,
and,
she invited you over first.
Oh, yeah. She's sitting there having coffee with her
gosh.
friend. She said, you have a story to tell.
That's cool.
And she says, what are you all about? And I said, well, I'm promoting.
You're like,
this thing.
let me start.
Yep. So that's how weird it got. And when she said, 4 feet above the knee prints, there was something that got away from you. It was interesting. And she said it seems like it was a female. Yeah, it was definitely female energy on the run, scared, on the run, fleeing.
What was she running from?
I don't know. Crazy stories. None of it can be validated, but the knees can be validated. The hair can be validated, and that's what we're just having fun with right now. So we'll see where it goes.
When you talk about look in the tree. I mean, this is Cindy, not the psychic. Cindy's like, you need to look in the tree. And sure as shit, there's mud. You said 7 feet up. Why would there be mud up there? I mean, why? It's not like someone just happened to grab a ball full of mud and throw it in the effing tree. I mean, that's not a random...
Very minuscule amount, less than a pinky nail size of red clay.
Wow. With
very small, detailed black hair. And I didn't see it like Daryl did, but it was about 5 feet up, chest height from him. And for Sarah to say that, I thought was a pretty astounding thing.
So the hair in the tree was black, but all of the hair in the actual prints that you guys casted was reddish brown, correct? Was there any black hair there?
No. That's
interesting.
That's not true. The hairs were all black, but under microscope, under Cindy's special detailed microscope, Sasquatch hair up close has a red hue to it. In fact, she uses the word, I'll bring the report back here, of an Irish setter red. So this gets into the red-headed giants. I mean, this story is as long as it is old, about the red-headed giants. And this amorphous red tinge inside the hair is something you can only see at a microscopic level with these black hairs. These are not black hairs. They're Irish setter red, but they're very black looking. When you pull them out of the ground, they have little tiny beard hairs.
See, and isn't that strange? I mean, does that tie into their whole, I need to be camouflaged, and this is part of their camouflage?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it would have been really cool to see it like a camouflaged hair that was cloaking.
Yeah,
but
yeah. You're like, I see it, but I don't see it. I'm going to pick it up. All right.
Yeah. So that's my story.
And by the way, everybody, this will all be linked, and Toby will have you mention every single place that everybody can find you. But these hairs are under microscope, photographed on the Owl Moon Prints page on Facebook. I will make sure all of this is linked because it's incredible. It's cool to look at. I encourage everyone to do that. And like Toby said, if there is anyone out there that wants to be like, hey, I have an explanation for this, he's welcoming that. He's saying, hey, I do too. So let's do this thing. If you have anything to say, then you can get a hold of me, or you can get a hold of Toby on his following social media sites and websites that he's going to mention. Of course, mention Strange Brau once more and the website for that, please.
Oh, yeah. So Strange Brau, BRAU, at gmail.com is the best way they could get a hold of me. They could go on Facebook and look up the same name, Strange Brau Facebook page. And they could go look up the Owl Moon Prints, or just look up Toby Johnson, TOBEJOHNSON. I'm on there, and I've got all my Strange Brau, flair sitting on my pages, so I'm easy to find.
All right, and we made sure to... Oh, what about all your YouTube stuff? Did you want to mention the off track for YouTube and for the Owl Moon Print stuff?
Well, if they want to go look at some old school stuff, they can go to Off Track. I think you type in Squatch or Sasquatch Off Track, you'll find my channel there, and it'll be easy to find because I've got things on the lights and about the London tracks and some other things down here. And then they can go look up strangebrau.com. A lot to say about the streaming service that we're trying to offer right now for free. And so, yeah, no, it's 4 or 5 different ways there listed. I think people can get a hold of me.
Well, Toby, thank you so much for coming on. It's been long overdue. I appreciate you getting in touch with me, and a lot of cool stuff going on. And I hope that people reach out and we can figure out exactly, although I think the psychic has it pretty locked in, considering that Cindy kind of corroborated the story, which is gave me chills too.
Yeah.
Although
something.
It's really kind of disconcerting to think of what would a 1,400-pound animal be running from like that. That's, so scared. I guess if you're scared for your child, though, that's a whole nother kind of scared, but pretty fascinating stuff.
Yeah.
And you've got a hell of an eye to be able to pick that out from a moving car, by the way. High five on that.
Thank you, Shannon. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Well, I'm so-and-so. I was given this name by my parents. I've been to such and such a college. I've done these things in my profession. I produce a little biography. Buddha says, forget it. That's not true. That's some story. That's all gone. That's all past. I want to see the real you are now. Well, nobody knows who that is. Because we don't know ourselves except through listening to our echoes and consulting our memories. But then there's a real you, and that again leads us back to this question. Who are you? That is the real you. We shall see how they play with this exam by the koans to get you to come out of your shell and find out who you really are. First there is summer, and then there is spring. idea in his poem, The Four Quartets, where he says, when you settle down in the train to read your newspaper and so on, you are not the same person who a little while ago left the platform. If you think you are linking your moments up in the chain. And this is what binds you to the wheel of birth and death. But when you know that every moment in which you are is the only moment, this comes into Zen. A master will say to somebody, "Now get up and walk across the room." And he comes back and he says, "Where are your footprints?" They've gone. So where are you? Who are you? When we are asked who we are, we usually give a kind of recitation of a history.